In this video, I am going to do Krugman and Wells, page 127, number 1. So in that problem, we have this person, Leon, who goes to the store to buy a t-shirt, and the max that he's willing to pay for this t-shirt is $10. And he picks it up and he goes to the register, and lo and behold, he finds out that the shirt is actually on sale for 50% off, so that he only has to pay $5 for the shirt. And we want to know what the consumer surplus is that's generated as a result. So first, before I even start answering the question, I first want to call attention to the assumption. So we'll put Leon over here. So I want to call attention to the assumption that we need to adopt in order to continue in this analysis of consumer surplus. We need to consumer surplus requires us to think about willingness to pay. And as a result, what we've implicitly assumed is the ability of someone like Leon or any consumer to pay. What that means is that Leon essentially gets up and goes to the store and finds himself with an amount of money that makes him able to essentially buy anything that he wants at the store. As a result, what he actually pays then is a reflection not of what he can afford. He can afford what he wants. It's a reflection of his willingness to pay, or what he thinks he should pay for the item that he's paying for. So it's a reflection of his preferences and not of what he can afford. In economics, we typically refer to this scenario where you wake up and find yourself with money to be able to buy whatever you want as an initial endowment. But we're not going to discuss this now. All that's required is for us to consider that the assumption here is that Leon has the ability to pay for what he wants. And as a result now, we can start to think about the consumer surplus. Now, the consumer surplus, analyzing the consumer surplus allows us to get an idea of what the difference is between what we were willing to pay, or what a consumer was willing to pay, and what they actually paid. So it's willingness to pay minus actual paid. Okay? And so in this example, we're told that Leon was willing to pay $10, but when he got to the register, he found that the shirt was on sale for $5, and so that he actually paid $5. Actually paid $5, so that the consumer surplus is $5. Now, we can show this graphically. So let me put up, actually, let me try this tool. Perfect. Okay. And now let me try and, sorry, I'm trying this for the first time. Okay. Nope. Okay. Okay. And so I'm going to have my, I'm going to have the amount sold, the quantity sold, and then the price on the vertical axis. Now, here we have one shirt was sold, Leon, and the willingness to pay was $10. Okay, so Leon was willing to pay. We could just think of this as just like, you know, just a bar graph. Leon was willing to pay $10. When he got to the register, he found that actually he only paid $5. So we can show this price that he paid with this second line, second horizontal line. And what the consumer surplus is going to be is the difference between what he paid and what he was willing to pay. In other words, it's going to be this area right here. And in order to calculate this area, we need to just do length times width. So here we have 1 times 5, so that our area is of this rectangle is 5, which matches what we got when we did it algebraically. Moving on to part B. In part B, I have Alberto, who is going to a music store to buy a Nirvana record, and who is willing to pay a price of up to $30. That's what he's willing to pay. Now, we have assumed that Alberto has the ability to pay. So he has the ability to pay more for this record, but he's only willing to pay $30. So that his purchase of the record of $30 is actually reflective of his preferences and not his checking account, or constraints on his checking account. Okay, and so adopting that assumption allows us to start thinking about the consumer surplus, which is just giving us a sense of the difference between Alberto's willingness to pay and what he actually paid. And what we're told in part B is that when Alberto was willing to pay $30, and when he got to the record store, he found that the record was indeed $30. And so when we calculate the consumer surplus, we have 30 minus 30, which is just 0. Now, representing this graphically, okay, so I have my price on the vertical axis, and then I have quantity on the horizontal axis. So I'll have quantity here of records sold and the price. So I have the quantity sold is just 1. This is just Alberto. And Alberto was willing to pay $30 for this record. And so you can just think of this as just showing this as if it's a bar graph. You know, one person, Alberto, is willing to pay $30. Now, the price that Alberto actually paid, I'll do this in a different color. The price that Alberto actually paid was here at 30. Okay? Now, we have that the consumer surplus is the difference between the willingness to pay and what was actually paid. And here, there's really actually no space between those values. That's why we can show graphically that actually there is no distance or no space here. In other words, it's 0. The consumer surplus is 0, which matches what we got algebraically. Okay, moving on to part C. In part C, we are told that Stacy has soccer practice and wants to get some mineral water afterwards and is willing to pay a max of $2 for it. And she goes to 7-Eleven, and again, the assumption we make here is that Stacy is not just going to 7-Eleven with $2 in her pocket. Rather, she has the amount of money that she needs to buy what she wants. She has, in other words, the ability to pay for what she wants, so that what she ends up paying for the bottle of water is a reflection not of what she can afford, but of her preferences. She doesn't want to pay more than that, though she can. Okay, so once we adopt that assumption, we can now think about the consumer surplus, which is just the difference between the willingness to pay and what was actually paid. And in this case, we are told that Stacy was willing to pay $2, but she goes to the supermarket, and actually this mineral water, or she goes, 7-Eleven, and this 7-Eleven, and the mineral water is $2.25. So it's actually 25 cents more than she's willing to pay. When we subtract these out, we're going to get a negative number, and that essentially just means that actually Stacy is not going to buy this water. There is no consumer surplus, no consumer surplus. Now, how do we see this graphically? Well, again, we have to set up our axes in order to show that graphically. Okay, so I have my quantity of mineral waters that are sold. I have the price at which they're sold, and I have that Stacy wants one water, so this is Stacy, and she's willing to pay $2 for it. Okay, so we can just show this almost as if it's a bar graph like that. But the problem is that she goes to the store, and actually she finds that the mineral water is for sale for $2.25. So actually this price is above above what we've represented as her demand. It's above this bar, which means that there is no consumer surplus. If the consumer surplus, if the price that she bought it for was down here, then we could calculate the consumer surplus as this area here. But since it's above what she's willing to pay, she's actually just not even going to buy that mineral water at all. Okay.